Hey there, guys. Can you hear me? I know it's been a little while, right? Um, just been transitioning for as of my new job and stuff, so getting used to that, kind of try to focus on that. I haven't really been thinking too much about these topics that I talk about, whether it's schizoid stuff, mental health in general, or whatever the hell I want to talk about at that given point. One thing I've noticed about, well, I guess for those of you that are still rolling in, I might as well update you. Um, let's see here. Med's still the same, still working, which is nice. Vyvanse, I discovered Vyvanse works better if you have a high protein breakfast with it. So, and I've also discovered what types of foods to not eat with it, because sometimes they cause malabsorption, and yeah, I feel like crap. Like for some reason, both times that I had peanuts or peanut product, like in the morning with it, yeah, I just felt awful for like the entire day. But when I have a high protein meal, whether it's eggs and stuff like that, or if you're a vegetarian, not peanuts apparently for me, but some other kind of soy or what's it, soy miso. If you've ever had that, it's pretty good. Um, it's like chorizo and eggs, but soy product, whatever. It seems to make things like Vyvanse and Adderall and certain other types of medications like that better, more effective, and easier on you. Um, as far as my life, I'm no longer in that hellhole of a warehouse. I am now doing a new job. I'm back doing AI related work. It's been an interesting place. It's very laid back, let's just say. So I like the new job because they treat the people and the management and stuff. They kind of treat us like independent contractors should be treated, not like W-2 employees should be treated. As far as, well, not should, but you know what I mean. Like, no micromanaging, no this, no constantly hounding us about that or this, or trying to make us make us behave like like a W-2 style, like a normal employee when we're ICs. And this place doesn't do that. It's very kind of let loose, pretty hands off. Just get your shit done, and then we'll pay you. And I've been liking that a lot. So those are updates on my stuff. All right. Last thing too is currently trying to catch up on bills and stuff, because I was out of work for a while, and then I found a job, and then even that job wasn't giving me full 40 hours a week because of reasons. And so yeah, it's tough, especially with Christmas coming up. Luckily, me and my wife are pretty smart. My wife especially, she is very smart. She will buy like gifts and stuff throughout the year on clearance, in order to have, like, just in case something like this happens, we have like some gifts and things like that, right? If she wasn't as proactive as she was, we'd be in quite a pickle right now, as far as trying to get the kids gifts and toys and stuff they want. um is my audio working okay? All right, cool. All right, moving on from that boring shit. um I want to talk about something that I think is kind of important, and that has to do with these kind of assumptions that I often see in both places like sometimes like the Schizoid Reddits, or people that apply to the server, sometimes even some of the Zoids in the server itself. What I'm claiming here isn't that, oh, Schizoids can't have some antisocial traits or whatever. Meaning, when I say antisocial, I'm not talking about like introversion. I'm not talking about aversion, right? I'm talking about like active, like sort of, whether it doesn't have to be acted upon, but like hostility. hostility toward toward people, toward society, toward fellow humans, like an active hostility. And there's a lot of jokes about that kind of stuff, memes and things like that. But one thing that I've noticed for the last few years, and not just myself, but in the vast majority of these Zoid individuals that I've come across, even the ones I disagree with, even the ones that like I might butt heads with, even the ones that like I get along with, or what have you, right? It's kind of the opposite, actually. One thing that people forget is that schizoids are incredibly sensitive individuals, but they're sensitive in like really idiosyncratic ways, really odd, kind of unique ways that are usually tied to their own autonomy, but more importantly for today's little ramble, the autonomy of other people and sometimes living things. That sensitivity sort of expands outward, right? And because of that, there tends to be higher likelihood that more schizoids they're actually quite pro-social, very pro-social. In fact, in some respects, so pro-social that it's part of the reason that they don't want to interact, or they withdraw, because oftentimes they perceive the world as it stands, society as it stands, civilization, human interactions as they stand, to be ultimately harmful, to be the opposite of thriving, the opposite of progress, the opposite of things like peace and understanding and true respectable forms of meritocracies, or meritocracy, and not the shit that people call it that, but you know, it's just a big old goof, right? But that's what I've kind of noticed. They're actually very, very pro-social. They're concerned, right? And look, when I say pro-social and antisocial, I'm not talking about pro-socializing, right? Obviously, schizoids are not really very pro-socializing, because there is already a plethora of negative assumptions, well, truths in some respect, for that individual about what socializing looks like. Behaving like a social animal in a world that kind of functions on it looks like. They're not pro that kind of stuff, really. They're also not necessarily anti, it's just not for me. But as far as pro-social goes, about society in and of itself, people suffering, people, the collapse, the kind of impending collapse of structures, the unfairness. I've noticed that a lot of schizoids tend to have a strong fairness sensitivity too, along with the autonomy stuff. And it kind of goes hand in hand, right? Like taking someone else's autonomy from them through direct or subversive means is unfair. They're very anti-cruelty, anti-selfish action, pro-selfless action, right? They'll see selfless action and go, wow, that's really cool. I really like, that's wholesome. That is a good thing. I am glad that is something that happened. I think a lot of schizoids sit around hoping for good news, but expecting bad news. And maybe not even hoping, right? Pleasantly surprised by good news, right? Good news maybe feels pleasantly surprising, because a lot of what's out there just feels so just like everyone's just having a shit time. But I think a lot of what the schizoid deals with is that in their mind they see a bunch of solutions sometimes, or like the question of why is it like this? Why does it need to be this way? Why does it need to be this way? Why does socializing have to look like this? Why do relationships have to be like this? Why do institutions have to behave like this? Why do people's actions are so often predicated on something that can often be either self-destructive or harmful to those around them, or they support things that are that focus on just individual um, status acceleration at the cost of uh, you know various types of suffering that others will have to endure, right? I often see when the Zoids talk about these things, they don't always have this kind of ambivalence toward it. It's more like it's turned into a detachment, than a active sort of I don't care, I don't give a fuck about what happens to anybody, right? Like that is incredibly rare that I see that in the schizoid. Um, they're often quite concerned with what happens to people or groups of people, especially groups that are undergoing like very unfair conditions or having their autonomy stripped of them, right? They are oftentimes not just depressed about, oh, well, I don't get pleasure from as many things as others, right? Um, that is something, right? Maybe, but it's often like more of a, I don't understand why this is what I need to do or people need to do to get pleasure, to get um, meaning, because the things that they seem to be doing actively, I perceive as negative, harmful, uh, like late game, bad decision making, right? And for the more like, I guess concerned Zoid, it becomes a little too much. Um, it the world itself feels oppressive, but not just for that particular individual, but just in many ways for just everyone. And I feel like a lot of schizoids can feel that. They could sense that. They could see it. They could point to it. They see constant examples of it, right? And you get this sort of malaise, right? This sort of that's how you start getting into the attitude of it is what it is, right? I feel like the Zoid oftentimes got pushed into that sort of position over time. I feel like that it is what it is the healthiest coping mechanism a schizoid can come up with for seeing various things about people, whether it's on an interpersonal level or on a larger, more meta scale, that just feels overwhelming. It makes you feel impotent against it. Like there's this kind of weight of futility, right? And in that sense, that weight comes from what I think is a very pro-social sensitivity. I think a lot of schizoids don't want others to feel as empty as they often feel themselves. I don't think they wish it upon others. I don't think they go, "Oh man, I wish other people could feel this alienated, this averse to um, the everyday machinations of normative life." I think a lot of schizoids, they're not antisocial, they're often anti-normative, especially if that normative thing is obviously detrimental, whether it's a philosophical perspective, harmful religious views or political views that ultimately harm the person themselves, along with those they have something against. I mean, there's also that. That's one of those things. Yeah. Schizoids are sensitive to injustice, I feel. They have like a certain level of just sort of like, but the way they deal with it is like detachment. They deal with it through the power of it is what it is. What can you do? This is what they do to themselves. This is how they behave. This is what they care about. They think what they care about is so important that it's worth this. It's worth this happening the way it does. And that causes a certain ennui, like a certain, because most schizoids I talk to and over the last few years, they're either sort of gotten to that detached point of they don't even get depressed anymore. They're just kind of they feel kind of like a husk sometimes. And then there's the ones that, like myself and others, still deal with like active depression because the detachment maybe was not as all-encompassing, right? They're internal. They didn't detach from their internal concerns completely. Though some days they wish they could because of how gross everything feels. I noticed that a lot of Zoids also like to say, "Oh, I wish I didn't have like a physical body. I wish I didn't have to deal with having flesh and bone. I wish I was just like the classic brain in a jar, floating brain in a jar, right? They just want to be like a thing that doesn't have to deal with this." And I don't think it's like, for many schizoids, I don't think it's coming from a place of like uh, apathy or a place of lethargy, right? Just laziness. Um, it's usually, I think, coming from a sense of hopelessness, a sense of um, just feeling too overwhelmed. Because a lot of these things that they say they don't want, like this body, whatever, they are the very cause for a lot of the problems that make people behave in some of the most disgusting ways. And when they see any of that in themselves, they find a certain level of disgust in that as well. Sometimes schizoids will describe it as like, I don't like being human because I don't want to be associated with not humans, but their actions. Their acceptable, often societally acceptable behaviors. Um, they don't want to get lumped into the lie that is, in my opinion, the lie that is often referred to as human nature. Because they don't share that nature to a significant degree. And a lot of schizoids get really tired, really depressed because they bought into what I think is a lie. They bought into the lie of human nature. And so, because they bought into that lie, it grows within them this melancholy, this just further either detachment or just depression, or some combination of both. Right? When the world is in such a state, when people do the things that they do, why it becomes that much more difficult to sort of take pleasure in things. That's part of it. Obviously, it's much more complicated. Cognitive gratefulness. I'd like to know what you mean by that. That's interesting. But it's not, that's the thing. This is what's interesting, is that, like, yeah, the schizoid often displays a lot of cognitive empathy, right? But it's not that that's all they possess. It's that that's the most detached way possible, like emotionally detached way possible of processing, dealing with, and so on, these sensitivities. Right. I think in many ways, especially as children, a lot of schizoids probably had a deeply, like, embedded, strong degree of affective empathy. It's just, it's overwhelming. It's just too much. It's also, it all feels so bad. And my primary complaint has been dissociation, derealization, not antisocial or asocial behavior. Yeah. Like that's what I'm saying. A lot of schizoids, they don't have, they're not really like, oh, I wish the world would end. It's so, I hate it, right? Even then, even when they say that, they're coming from like this weird place of like, overwhelming, like, when will everyone stop hurting? When will the hurting stop? When will the seemingly this limbo, they might perceive, of just that's why sometimes a lot of zoids tend to take a kind of like either anti, like, natalist, or sort of ambivalent to natalism type positions, especially for themselves. You're not going to find them having a lot of children. Instead of feeling a way about something, you can intellectualize how you should perceive your situation or yourself, and that way you can be grateful while maybe still being depressed or ambivalent. Okay. I think a lot of zoids probably have a lot of trouble feeling grateful, because there is, I can't speak for everyone or anything, but like, I've heard zoids tell me that they almost feel like ashamed from like being like, oh yeah, my life is good, so that's all that, like, that means I should be, that's good enough, I should be happy now because my life is good. Right. I've heard zoids describe that sort of thinking as sort of like the type of thinking that makes them averse to people. One of those types of thinking that makes them averse to people in general. Because a lot of people tend to be that way, right? They tend to be like, my life's good, so life is good. And that's something that I've heard zoids complain about. They're not a fan of that notion sometimes. Which I think it's about balance when it comes to that. It's about balance, right? I'm also not a fan of when people's individual lives are good, that kind of sort of rose tinted glasses everything else about life, or then they actively avoid things that will take them out of that bubble of happiness. Right? But I also do not think, and I'm guilty of this, do not think that we should allow that just kind of disgust with hyper individualized happiness that kind of ignores um, or sometimes comes at the cost of other people's like autonomy and pain. You don't have to live your life being entirely consumed by that, and thus detached because of it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the thing is, right, like for I think a lot of Zoids can be sensitive to that active, and um they can't say, "Oh, well, I don't care." It's more like they have to say, "It is what it is. It is what it is." It's like, and there's more than they can do, in my opinion, than just do that, right? I think there are even healthier ways of coping than detachment. I was considered the opposite of my own experience is occurring. Yeah. Yeah. And so the options are people that are aware of that and they just choose to turn a blind eye or just like not care, like actively just not give a shit. Or they run, they run away from it, like they don't want to see it, they want the blinders on. But then you have the people that like are like, I'm gonna make myself see it because it's real, and then like, and then you become essentially pretty useless at even reducing the very issues that concern you on a local level. You just become like just a useless husk in some ways. And I only say that because I know exactly what that was like. And the other option, besides it is what it is, in my opinion, it should be it is what it should be. Right? And I'm gonna say do act in whatever small way that I can to defy that. Even if it means getting off my ass and trying to find something in life that gives me meaning, but also helps. Also helps. Is also pro-social in some regard. Again, clarifying, not pro-socializing, pro-social. Okay. Like for example, when it comes to conventional socializing, by the average, I would be anti-socializing. I'm not anti-social, but I can be very anti-socializing, because it's a combination of like the stuff I was just talking about, but also like my experiences, my priorities, my lived experience being so fucking alien, so fucking different to everyone, or most peoples that I'm around. Like if my wife's family has like a get together, right? And her whole family's here, and all these all these people are here, right? I could see that they're all actively sort of enjoying being around each other and having these conversations, right? And I can't I can't I can't listen to these conversations um and relate to them because a lot of the concerns and a lot of stuff that's being discussed is stuff that makes sense to them, that they value. But my value system is so different in many ways. And I think that's another issue as to what I mean, that the schizoid is actually quite pro-social. They have a value system that's often very pro-social. It's just that the way they perceive it wouldn't be a topic of discussion during, nice familial social events. No, I'm using it like anti-people. Yeah, not that's why I said not anti-socializing, not not pro or anti-socializing, but people, anti-people. And it's interesting because like I said, I find it interesting how the schizoid is very anti-socializing, but not antisocial. I met schizoids who really take a social behavior to the max. Asocial. Okay, you're saying asocial behavior to the max, but never had a problem with being in society. But I also liked no real friends. People eventually learn to just prompt to hang out with me. But yeah, I'm talking about it correctly. I would say correctly when I'm saying antisocial. I think a lot of people use it incorrectly. It actually really bothers me. And it should. It's just so goofy, right? For me. But like, I'll go into like a store or something, and they'll have like hats that are supposed to be quirky, and they say antisocial or don't talk to me, I'm antisocial, and I'm just like, no, you're not. It's fucking dumb. Like, that's not what that's supposed to fucking mean. Antisocial requires disdain, like I said, hostility. It requires just like an active animosity toward humanity and people. If that's what you deal with, is that's like the main reason you stay away from people, you're probably not schizoid. You're dealing with some other issue. The fact that being asocial is a problem for people makes me more schizoid. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, because that's the thing. But that's what's funny. Asocial, right? Asocial. Like, again, I even when I hear asocial, I get confused. Because often people use it as asocializing. Right. Right. It's very different. Because when I hear asocial, the way I hear pro-social and antisocial, I hear like a complete disregard or ambivalence toward what happens to people. Like, you just like, oh, a bus full of okay, a school bus full of kids like exploded and all the kids died, right? Let's just say that happens, right? The antisocial person would be like, good, fuck kids, fuck people. The pro-social person would be like, that's fucked up. This shouldn't happen. What happened? Like, was it something that could have been prevented? Like, fuck, right? And the truly asocial person would be like, and wasn't me, ever. That sucks, I guess. I don't know. They're not my kids. And actually means it. And actually means it. Like, they're just, okay, whatever. I didn't know any of them. So that's what I mean. I think a lot of people are, I think the world can push a lot of people to become asocial. I don't think most people, no matter how like crap their lives are become antisocial. I think most people are actually like relatively pro-social, but to a certain degree. I think that degree is far too small. I would even argue that the schizoid is probably far more pro-social than somebody that's not. I think neurodivergent people in general are more actively pro-social. I think they're sensitive to specific things that make them more pro-social. I think they're sensitive to specific types of suffering, pain, because they endured it. Specific types of alienation, marginalizing, shit like that. Neglect. I think my ADHD symptoms have been on a boon for me in this regard because I tend towards impulsiveness and speak openly about what I find interesting. Apparently, most people find me intriguing. I don't tend to have the same problem of situations not being what I want them to be, though. I did have issues when I was younger until I was repeatedly challenged by what if I just dids? What if I just dids? Maybe it's a typo. But I want, if you're a schizoid or whatever, and you relate to what I'm talking about, think about why you're detached when it comes to this stuff. And see, am I detached because I actually care a lot? And it's just too fucking much. Right? And if that's the case, there are ways to manage that overwhelming sensation that doesn't require this sort of detachment, that doesn't require the mantra of it is what it is. That is a bad mantra. That is ineffective. And as you've seen in the meme, you often see I'm running out of it is what it is, because it's a temporary strategy, right? It's what you do when you have no actual alternatives and you're in a situation where there is nothing you can do, right? It's like every aspect of it is beyond your control. When you make it your mantra, you start forgetting that there are various things that are actually in your control that you could do something about. And you almost like develop a learned helplessness of a abstract sort of, or of an idea, of a certain, of this idea that nothing can improve, like everything is there's static, it's always going to be like this. And again, that's why I bring up that, what I consider that lie of human nature, right? So like a lot of schizoids will kind of think like, well, people will always be this way and this world's horrible. And why should I let it make me fucking miserable? I'd rather just like not think about it. I'd rather just detach, because they know that if they weren't as detached as they are, they know it would hurt a lot. It would be really, like I said, overwhelming. And I don't fault at all the schizoid that's like that for it's not like it was an active choice, right? But for wanting to stay within that sort of armor of detachment, right? Why the idea of taking it off, even if they could, why it would be such a bad idea in their mind. I think it's only a bad idea if you continue having these sort of what I think are like fallacious ideas about how overwhelmingly true the futility of your actions really are. I think one of the ways for the schizoid to recover, amongst all the things I've discussed in the past, is to challenge that internalized sort of sense of futility. And I've seen Zoids do it. I've seen them do it. I'm one of them. Shadow, in many ways, in my opinion, I've seen a significant. They were never like as, down and out, but the feeling of I can do something. I can do something. Why isn't my chat completely showing up here? It's so weird. Hold on. It's showing up on my main, what the fuck? Oh, it wasn't scrolling for some reason. Oh, okay, now I can see what everyone's saying. Okay, what were you saying? Oh, you were saying, no, people ask me, what if you just asked these questions? What if you just acted how you wanted to? What if you expressed to others how you wanted to interact with them? Oh, okay. I don't feel bad about it when I hear about a tragedy. I would have to be there to have a connection to it. Even then, I don't know. It would emotionally affect me. I know how I should feel, but I just can't. Masking grief makes me feel like a fucking psycho, but I have to do it or I'll look like one. I think for a lot of Zoids, when they hear about a tragedy, they might not be oh, those poor, like I said, a school bus full of fucking kids, right? Something horrible happens and it fucking goes off a cliff or something, right? I could see how most Zoids wouldn't be oh, the fucking kids, that kind of shit. But there might be the sensitivity, sort of this righteous indignation of why was this even a problem? What allowed this to happen? They're fully aware of a bunch of fucking kids in a bus shouldn't go careening down a fucking hill. They go, no, why did this happen? Who's responsible for this, right? Those are the questions that I think will pop into their head. Who's responsible for this shit? Who did this? Was it engine failure? Did somebody crash into them? And when it's when it's just circumstance, there's just a freak accident, right? I could see a kind of fuck. Well, sometimes shit happens, but there is a sadness there. But when it's something that is sort of involved in, what's it called? In some way associated to that sensitivity to their autonomy and such, or people's incompetence that led to hurting others, or people's selfishness, right? Let's just say the reason the bus went careening off the fucking whatever embankment and killed all those hypothetical kids wasn't a freak accident. It was because the school decided to invest in administrative costs instead of making sure that the bus's brakes were functioning correctly, or replacing the brakes sooner than they should. Right? And then in my mind it becomes, this is something that could have been avoided. This is just recklessness that led to the deaths of to the snuffing out of the autonomy of a bus full of kids. That's the difference. It is an unchecked error. It is unchecked error. And you know that you wouldn't choose your bottom line, your lining your own pockets at the risk of something like this occurring. And for some of you, maybe that is what sickens you, right? But then sometimes you get to that point where you have to compartmentalize that too. It is what it is. Right? It's like, no. You can say something. You can show others. Look at this shit. This is fucking unconscionable. You could do something small, like if you're somebody that has a YouTube channel, talk about it, right? If you have family members that bring it up or something, mention it. Mention what really happened. It's like, no. We don't have to be sitting here crying over the kids, right? These kids should never have died, like that. It is like it's kind of like okay, I'm gonna make this a short stream because it tends to drag on too long and for everybody, but it's sort of like the same issue of when I've watched or like when my wife, I don't watch, well, if my wife is watching some kind of like, those shows like 600-pound whatever, or like, or like, just like we're or like my another one, fucking hoarders and shit like that, right? Like, I'll see people watching it and I'll see the way the people involved are watching it, and they're all just kind of talking about like, oh man, like this is so sad for this person. If I was that person, I would be really sad, or like blah blah blah, right? But then I'll see something like that playing and I'll go like, why isn't anybody doing anything about it? Like, how did it get this bad? Why did the family not stop it when it was like kind of happening? Why did they enable this? What kind of social bullshit let this fucking old woman live in like piles of like fucking cat shit? What the fuck is wrong with everybody? These people are crying and saying they love grandma. Why didn't you stop this? Why didn't you? What did you do? What did you do to stop this? What's wrong with her mental health? Do you guys talk about mental health in your family? Is that something that is just like verboten in your family? Is that why everyone's all mentally unhealthy, but it's a social faux pas to bring up that maybe grandma has mental health issues, or maybe grandma will get mad at you and she'll say, I'm not crazy, and you don't want to learn about that stuff because it's too sad or scary? That's what goes through my fucking head. I get mad. I get fucking annoyed. Because I'm like, what is this? Right? And I think taking that position is a healthier form of coping with that kind of overwhelming than detachment. Not that the most schizoid should be like, you know what, Anx, you're right, I'm gonna stop being detached. No, I get that. I'm not an idiot. It is a process. It is an arduous one. But as painful or uncomfortable as it is it is what it is to stop working, to the detachment to stop being sort of continued in exchange for the discomfort that often leads to, you get a sense of purpose. You get a sense of meaning. You get a sense of, this will not stand. I'm going to say something. I'm going to do something. I'm going to write something. I'm going to draw something. I'm going to mention something. Whatever. Whatever it is. Or I'm going to help. I'm going to help. I'm going to help. I'm not going to be one of those people that feels bad about the thing because, like, what if that happened to me? Right? No, I'm gonna help because it's not me and it did happen. And it could come in all sorts of forms. That's what I mean. Like, it can be in a more grumpy, angry form like me, or it can be in a more like passive, like, helping some charitable event, or something like that, right? Where it's not like you're just targeting the thing that causes it, and you're fucking mad and you want to fucking, like, there's other way. It's or focusing that energy on like helping the people that are dealing with the consequences of the thing that's pissing me off, because one person's going to be too busy calling that shit out and being pissed. There has to be other people that are doing the other work where they're like just trying to help alleviate the consequences of those actions and such. Anyway, I'm gonna stop there because like I'm getting to that ramble point where I'm just like probably gonna go off into a detour or something. But yeah, if you're Zoid and you're out there and you're listening to this, there's a chance that you're actually you care about people a lot, and maybe in different ways, right? In different layers and forms, especially if you're more of an autist or you're more of a schizo like me. Like, it just depends, but you still, like, I think most schizoids still are very pro-social in that way. They're like, people's shouldn't have to suffer as much as they suffer. People's autonomy should not be as stripped as much as it's stripped. Other people's status should not do that, or need for status and power and such like that. It should not be producing the consequences that it does. The fundamental way that various things function are flawed and full of just archaic nonsense that's just predicated on continuing a process that keeps the focus of the individualized self-created paradise for just me. It's just funny. I don't think most schizoids are me, 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 me. I I really don't. It's more like nobody, nothing. At the lowest point. Nobody, nothing, nowhere. All right, guys. If you want to help me out economically, till I get myself out of this kind of financial hole at the moment due to lack of work and other things for a while, I appreciate it. To those that like sent me a few bucks on my PayPal, I really, really fucking appreciate that. Sucks, man. It sucks when you have to use like your credit card to like pay for shit, like, because you live paycheck to paycheck and you have a job for a while, or the job you get, it like pays half of, well, not half, but like 40% less than the job you had that you suddenly just lost. It sucks. All right, peace out, guys. If I don't know what I'm going to be doing after this. Let me see if I have any messages. I have funny stories. So, about my new job. If you want to hear those funny stories, well, they're depressing funny. Like depressing? No, I don't know if they're funny. They're just, I don't know. I have stories about my new job. I'll probably hop on the VC for a bit. If anybody's interested in chatting about whatever, including that. Well, as usual, when day is dark, always remember happy day and occasionally get fucking mad. Peace.